The planet Castorius was dying. A star just 60 light-years away went supernova and it became critical and converted to a magnetar within 1 year. This began killing off over 315 different species of humanoid-like people. The radiation from that magnetar was so intense that it sterilized the great people of Castorius as well as the peoples of the other worlds. The people of the world began to ask, how are we going to reproduce? What is to become of 40,000 years of science, engineering, medicine, cultural advancements, and general knowledge that we have accumulated over all these centuries? What are we going to do? Scientists from over 24 worlds got together and began formulating a superhumanoid that would contain all of the DNA that would define all of their species. It would filter out all the undesirable attributes and only enhance those attributes most desirable. Thousands and thousands of times they failed. Time grew short, but they had one success. It was a female. Now the magnetar was beginning to act as if it wants to become a black hole. They had to build a spaceship to send our little princess to Earth, the only Class M planet with other humanoid species that she could survive among. This is the last best hope for preserving knowledge, science, medical knowledge, engineering, and so much more. For 18 months, as the fetus grew into a maturing baby in the matriation chamber, she would have the equivalency of 17 PhDs was bundled into her brain through a learning machine. It also included a vast array of general knowledge. She would be the vessel of all this knowledge. For once she is deposited on Earth, the ship would have to be sent into the sun to be destroyed to keep the residents of Earth from gaining access to such super powerful electronics and propulsion. Otherwise they would destroy themselves in short order. Time was growing short. Some of the debris being projected out from the supernova, now turning into a magnetar, struck the two moons of Castorius. It shattered them into 1,000,000 pieces. The rest of the debris, the size of the Empire State Building, would cover one side of the planet and its ocean. Absolute catastrophic events were taking place all around the planet. Hurried preparations were made. And our princess was then launched into the stars, now headed toward Earth, with the greatest of hopes, the last bastion of Castorius and the other 315 worlds that the magnetar turning into a black hole would soon destroy. An experimental tri-quantum computer chip had been placed in the cerebral cortex of our little princess. This would allow her to go beyond quantum computing and excel into tri-quantum computing using her own organic brain. This allowed her to take on tens of thousands of volumes of information gathered from the most prestigious libraries and universities and science centers of the 315 worlds now being destroyed by a black hole. The distance to Earth was 1.78 trillion light years, and even in hyper-FTL it would still take some 350 years to reach Earth. While in stasis, our princess downloaded even greater amounts of knowledge into her mind, as well as the star charts that were being made by the ship's sensors. As she passed through galaxy after galaxy, solar system after solar system, until she reached Earth. The computer began to wake our princess, and then for the first time she saw her new home, the planet Earth. As the ship dropped out of FTL and began slowing its descent to the Earth's surface, our little princess began going over all the controls and setting things in their proper order, so that a smooth and uneventful landing would take place. She would cloak the ship and then teleport to the entrance of Ellis Island. Here she would mingle among other people, all while the ship still cloaked would take itself to the sun and burn up, leaving no trace, leaving no evidence of her being an alien. Here at Ellis Island she would apply for a temporary visitor's pass, all while she was awaiting a green card status as a refugee. She let them know she was an orphan, told them she was born in international waters. The sailboat she was born on had no flag flying. Her mother died while having her aboard the sailboat. Only recently had her father passed away, and she had nowhere else in the world to go. At this point she threw herself upon the mercy of the power of the United States of America. A temporary pass had been granted, while the rest of her case would be under review. At this point in time in history, long-term passes were becoming scarce and hard to get. She told him that she would be looking for a boarding house, With adult supervision near Harvard University, our princess had chosen a name for herself when she was at Ellis Island, Aya, Red, Row. She approached the first boarding house on the outskirts of town 15 miles from Harvard University. It was a dump, and she had very little money as she had gone to one of the local banks to trade gold for cash. It did not seem like much, but it was all that she had. The owner of the boarding house said no. We are not able to take unaccompanied children, especially little orphan children. You will have to find somewhere else to go. Aya inquired, then where shall I go? I don't care. Send the boarding house owner. Then our princess began a journey back toward the university in hopes of finding something closer, and someone willing to take her in. Aya had become painfully aware she was gonna need much larger quantities of money than this. She inquired, where is one of the best banks for doing trade around the country, and would yield the best results for an ounce or two of gold? The businessman in which she asked looked at her curiously and said, my young lady, the National Bank. That bank was designed to do trade all over the United States, of which there are of many branches. I have thanked the businessman, and then she curtsied. She then went on to the National Bank, knowing that she could not just materialize the gold, as it would cause panic. So when no one was looking, she made a small red wagon loaded with gold covered with a canvas cloth. She then went to the National Bank with it in tow. Engineered within her with the aid of the tri-quantum microcomputer chip in her brain. This allowed her to pull off the dematerializing of one object into another on a subatomic level so she could quietly return trash into gold, silver, copper, or whatever else she needed. Aya then stood before the banker with her wagon loaded to bear with gold. She told the banker that her grandfather had passed away, and she had inherited his entire estate. She explained that she was the sole heir to her family's fortune. She said, I need cash, some trading, and some gold. The banker said it is $20.67 per troy ounce. That comes to $330.72 a pound, and from what I can see here, you have 100 pounds here. I don't see how a little lady like you could have pulled that little wagon into this bank with that much gold, but I'm proud of you nonetheless. That'll be worth $33,072. Excellent, said Aya. Then I wish to open a bank account with you, if I may please. The banker was quite eager to make trade, and accepted her gold and gave her a receipt and a bank book proving how much she had. She said, I'll need about $1,100 to do some business transactions locally. Would that be possible? The banker said yes and counted out in small denominations $1,100. He asked what she was going to do with all that money. She said, first I gotta find a place to live. And being I'm an orphan, nobody's willing to take me in, so I may have to do a little bribing in order to find a place to live, such as a boarding house. Main purpose for my wanting a boarding house is there are many adults there. This way I can show that I have mentorship and adult supervision. The banker raised his eyes and stared at her for just a moment. And then he began to laugh with a massive belly roar to the likes you've never heard. You're a clever little girl. Will you be doing more deposits with us in the near future? Oh yes, Mr. Solomon. I will bring some more gold and silver into the bank in just a few days. But first I must get my affairs in order, obtain a place to stay, and become established in the community. Mr. Solomon the banker wrote a letter of recommendation for young Aya. Aya then did a graceful courtesy and gave thanks to Mr. Solomon the banker. He said, ask one of the tellers where a good boarding house might be. She did so and was on her way. Aya went to the suggested boarding house just 2.2 miles from the university. This was the perfect distance, as it would be easy to teleport from the side yard where no one could see. She would be behind the bushes at the house and then go directly to the bushes just outside the university. She went up to the door and saw Mrs. Brown coming out to greet her. Mrs. Brown, like all the others, says, I'm sorry, we don't take children, especially ones that are unaccompanied, into the house. Not to be dissuaded, Aya asked, what would it take for you to take me in as a legitimate boarder? I really can't. I do have one room open, but I don't want to get myself into trouble. Aya had told her that she would pay 1 year's fee up front. Mrs. Brown was not dissuaded by this argument. Aya looked around. There was nobody in sight. She turned back around to Mrs. Brown and said, "I have $1,000 in cash in this envelope, all small denominations. It is yours if you'll just take me in. Plus I will then pay you in addition to that 1 year's rent." Mrs. Brown said, "But how can I explain you because there is no parent?" I had told her that she was her godchild, as she would exclaim in a playful way. Not, wink wink. Mrs. Brown looked at her with a worried face and grave concern. How would I explain that? Oh, that is easy, I said, while my mother was still with me in a family way. At one of the church functions they had with somebody wished to pledge being a godparent to this unborn child. You are more or less pressured to do it by peer pressure. It was not in your church, it was one that you was visiting during a potluck dinner. Mrs. Brown raised an eye at this, and reluctantly agreed and says, hurry in before anyone sees you." "Well, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Betty Brown. Most everybody around here calls me Miss B. And what's your name, young lady?" "My name is Ira." "Well, nice to meet you, Miss Aya." "Well, I guess there's nothing else to say other than let's go up and see your room. It's on the top floor to your right-hand side overlooking the street." "Well, here's your room. I hope it's to your liking." "Oh yes. It's just right, Miss B. Thank you so much for taking me in." "Well, we shall see," said Miss Brown. "There'll be no boys in your room, do you understand?" "Oh yes, ma'am." "All right then, breakfast is at 6:30 a.m. every morning. At supper time, Aya introduced herself to everyone at the supper table. She was welcomed by each and every one of the members of the household. She did her usual curtsy, and was well received. During the meal they asked Aya about where her parents were, and she told them she had recently been orphaned. However, she did have a reasonable supply of funding to keep herself running for a number of years. She would do her best to stay out of everyone's way and pay all of her bills on time. They would all ask the usual questions: what would she like to be when she grew up, how old she was, what her plans were, her favorite colors, etc., and they found it most interesting that she would be all alone in this world. But it was not uncommon in those days. Aya was very cordial, and everyone really liked her. The evening grew late, and Aya decided to retire to her room. She knew that she could not take up the bathroom as in the mornings, because the adults needed that to get ready to go to work. So with her usual ability to create matter from other matter, she made a multi-spatial, multi-dimensional corridor into which she could then go in and have a full-blown bathroom, with a place to sit to do her makeup and other things. This would be hidden from the rest of the world behind a bookcase. And no one would be the wiser. By using a multi-spatial, multi-dimensional array to create her bathroom, it only took up 1/16 of an inch in actual space in her room, yet it was fully expanded in an all-alternate dimension. It contained a jacuzzi, a shower, sink, toiletry, and a vanity for her to prepare herself for the day. This would eliminate her getting in the way of the adults as they prepared for work each day. When she began school, whether it be college or elementary school, she would be able to clean herself and prepare and make herself presentable to the world. The next day she returned to the bank with a very large container outside. She went in and talked to Mr. Solomon, the banker, and said, "This box is too heavy for me to bring indoors. I had to hire someone to bring it out to the bank. It contains the rest of the gold and silver that my grandfather left me upon his death. I wish to make this a deposit in your bank, please." Mr. Solomon raised an eyebrow and went outside to see what he could see in regards to this large container that contained gold and silver. To Mr. Solomon's amazement, shock, and awe, the crate contained 5 tons of silver and 5 tons of gold. The gold would be worth $3,307,200, and the silver would be worth $96,000, and would come to $3,403,200, the largest deposit they've had in many a day. Mr. Solomon says, "We're going to have to get the guards out here to guard this while we get some dollies to cart this into the bank for safekeeping. We can't just keep this outside." They worked all day, also calling in additional help to bring all the gold and the silver into the bank. "We've never seen so much gold and silver in one place," said Mr. Solomon. "You are a very fortunate young lady. Please, allow me to write you a receipt so that you will have proof of deposit." Mr. Michaels accompanied Mr. Solomon and entered it into Aya's bank book as well. The work took all day, and late into the evening. They had never seen such a haul in their entire lives. Miss Aya thanked them cordially, gave a beautiful curtsy, and then left the bank to return home. Almost missing supper, Aya came into the house and went straight to the supper table just in the nick of time to get her evening meal. She listened to the adults, no one asked her any questions, and no one was the wiser, which she was very thankful. Her next step was going to be in the following morning, she would go to Harvard University and turn in the 3 dissertation papers, only 3 mathematical questions that no one has yet been able to answer. Now that Aya had a location to call home, she would have an address for them to send a letter or postcard letting her know whether they accepted her dissertations or not. These compilations were done in black ink. This is so that there could be no erasures of any kind. Once she closed the books, she put a paper seal over the book so that only the person it was going to examine the book would have access to the content. Otherwise, the seal would be broken and it would not be valid. So she summed up all of her courage and headed to the university to accept the challenge of all 3 of these high-end impossible to answer mathematical computations. The reason for this mad scheme was that she did not want to go to an elementary school and be bored to tears. Second, and the most important part, is she could schedule her classes at college around her ability to start a business. This was her main goal and object. Aya approached the university and went to the registrar's office. Aya asked them who could she speak to in regards to the 3 mathematical question challenge. They looked at her with curiosity and would not answer right away, as for she was just a child. She said, "Pardon me, but I have 3 journals here with the answers to those questions. I am here to challenge your challenge." The red star-looking annoyed pointed down the hall. Room R106 is for Dr. Jones. He is the person that will be taking the mathematical questions and to determining if the answers are accurate or not. They began muttering things under their breath about a child wasting Dr. Jones's time. Aya said, "I'm not here to waste his time. These are truly the answers to the questions that the university has challenged the world to." Aya then went down the hall to see Dr. Jones. Aya knocked on the door. Dr. Jones says, "Enter." Aya enters and introduces herself to Dr. Jones. She tells Dr. Jones her purpose of her visit to his office today. She stated that, "I hereby challenge Harvard University to look over my papers and verify that I indeed have solved the puzzle of each of these mathematical equations." Dr. Jones took this extremely serious, as a mere 4-year-old child stood before her with 3 journals in hand. "Is this your work?" he questioned. "Yes," said Aya. "You can ask me any mathematical question you want, and I will write it here on your blackboard and prove to you that I can indeed answer any mathematical question you can throw at me." "I see that you are very serious," said Dr. Jones. "No one would come in here with 3 journals in hand and say, 'I have the answers,' if they did not have the answer. I tell you what I will do. I will present your challenge with a challenge. If you can answer the following mathematical question on this blackboard in under 5 minutes, I will take each of your journals in serious consideration. Should I find that all 3 journals are truly accurate, I will give you a full-blown PhD in mathematics. Not an honorary PhD, mind you, but the real deal. I have tenure here, and I have the ear of the president of the university. If you can answer this one question on this blackboard that has caused many a mathematician to break down more the nervous rigors attempting to solve the mystery, I will indeed give you that PhD this coming spring. If that takes place, Dr. Jones, do you think that they would allow me to take physics, chemistry, engineering, geology, and some other science degrees? I will personally see to it that you do if you can answer that question on the blackboard, and all 3 of your journals are accurate. If you can do all that you rightfully deserve to be able to be a student at this college. Let me ask, do you have the money for the books and tuition?" "Yes, sir, I do." Dr. Jones looked with stark shock and was taken back by the positive answer. "Very well, we have it a deal. You have exactly 5 minutes to answer that question, young lady, and if you can do that, you're well on your way to becoming a full-time student at Harvard University. There is the equation on the board. Now begin. I'm going to time you with my new stopwatch from Switzerland. On your mark, get set, go." Aya began to write out the mathematical equation on the blackboard with amazing speed and accuracy. Dr. Jones almost fell over with absolute amazement and astonishment. "We have a prodigy here," he exclaimed to himself. "Finished," said Aya. Dr. Jones hit the stopwatch, one of the few stopwatches in all the New England states. 2 minutes and 2 seconds. "Dear Lord," said Dr. Jones. "Do you realize some of the finest mathematical minds in the world have spent their entire lifetimes attempting to solve this equation? None of them ever accomplish it in their lifetime, yet you solve it in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm a man of my word." You shall indeed graduate this next spring with a PhD in mathematics from Harvard University. I never thought it would be possible. But you haven't even looked at the journals yet, exclaimed Aya. I don't need to, he said, not to get the PhD. I will not go over these journals with a fine-tooth comb, but I can tell you right now by looking at what you just did before my very eyes, I have the utmost confidence that they are flawless in nature. I am so honored, and so moved, Dr. Jones said. Dr. Jones then actually began to cry and sob, wiping away his tears with his handkerchief. This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my entire life, he said. Such genius, such precision, and at the speed of the angels themselves. After Aya had finished with the professor, and after Haven spoken with him at length, for almost an hour, Aya then decided to return home. It was getting late in the evening. At supper time everyone was round the table once again eating a fine supper. Paul and Mary were talking about how they had lost their jobs this day. They were quite worried as they did not know how they were going to pay the rent, buy new clothing, or just keep up with basic living expenses. Aya chimed in, how would you both like to make $3 a day? Paul and Mary both looked at Aya with curiosity and say, whatever do you mean, Aya? Well, I have quite an inheritance. Aya told them, and I have dreamed of opening an office supply house locally. I noticed on my way home from Harvard, there is a massive warehouse that is abandoned. Seems that it was someone's dream to build an automobile factory here, but their brand did not make it. Space in which we could store office supplies to be mailed out. I have an excellent source, in fact multiple sources, of product. I firmly believe that I could win government bids by putting out a catalog of our products. I'm willing to pay both of you $3 a day to go to commercial college. It's halfway between here and Harvard. It's an accredited business college. You get your certificate from this business college, and you'll be manager, and Betty will be the assistant manager. You will each get a salary plus a percentage of the profits off of the office supply business. I recently found a lawyer that can draw up all the papers and get the LLC started. Also, there's a certified public accountant down the road from the attorney. If you'll work with me, I'll start this business with my inheritance, and we'll all do very well together. What do you say? The very next morning, Aya went down to the county seat, and she inquired how much is that warehouse on Planter Street was. It is on the struck-off list. It's $8,000. Reason is it so much is, it's been sitting there for some time. We just want to sell it for the amount of taxes that are owed on it. Aya inquired, will you take a check? You can call the bank, and they will let you know that the check will indeed clear. The tax office called the bank, verified that the check would indeed clear. Aya wrote the check, and the county seat gave her a certificate of ownership of the property. They were curious and inquired what she had plans for this building. Oh, I plan to have it upgraded a little bit, and start an office supply company mail order style. I primarily will be working wholesale as well as retail. She left the building then with ownership papers in tow. She then went out to the warehouse to beginning to do renovations even though they were not legally authorized. She would leave the exterior as is for the moment. But she would very slowly but steadily improve the quality of the outside, not so fast that anyone would notice from one day to the next. She then went inside and began to look around. Aya began to look around the warehouse and realize it's going to need a little cleanup. But that shouldn't take but about 10 or 15 minutes. Aya would have the inside working like a well-oiled machine. Aya had began to work on the inside rather than the outside, as she did not want to draw an immediate attention to the building. She completely rebuilt the entire infrastructure of the building. Aya then reinforced the building with solid steel columns. She then set out to create a roller transport system for packages to be shipped out. In the upper floors of the warehouse, the floors had all been removed. Instead, they had all been replaced with extra-wide catwalks with safety railing for anyone that went upstairs. Massive product bins were firmly affixed to the wall. This went all around the building. The infrastructure was massive. Yet, the vast majority of the upper system had robotics that would grab each item and bring it down for packaging. When an item was taken from the bin, that night it would be replaced with a new one automatically. It was slick, beautiful, and extremely efficient. None of this would be possible if it had not been for her creators. Embedding the tri-quantum processor in her brain. This microprocessor allowed Aya to preform matter replication just by daydreaming things into existence within mere moments. Aya went to the commercial college where Paul and Mary were enrolled, knowing she could pick up a handful of employees and employ them through a temporary agency as she was just getting started. Aya would begin to train them on how to use laptop computers as no one from 1916 had ever seen a computer. The bookkeeping program was simple, yet very powerful. The fulfillment software was also very simple to use, yet it was almost overkill in its power. Aya knew that it was gonna take some time to train the people on how to do the bookkeeping even though they had graduated bookkeeping from the commercial college. Once they got over the initial shock of it all, they began to enjoy using their newfound laptop bookkeeping system. This was beyond even the greatest science fiction stories that they had ever read. As the new bookkeepers began settling in and becoming proficient with using the laptop computers, Aya then went back to the temporary agency and hired about a dozen warehouse workers. She began orienting the workers to how the roller transport system worked and how safety measures needed to be employed. Also in package inspection before shipping. They learned very quickly, and were bowled over in amazement with the roller transport system as they have never seen such magnificent machinery in all their days. Within a week Paul and Mary would be graduating from the commercial college. She had both of them take the business administration, as well as the bookkeeping, and secretarial studies. Paul kept saying that he was embarrassed to be in the secretarial, but Aya pointed out that he needed to know how all of the systems worked. As Paul and Mary would be graduating the very next day, Aya during the night went over to the warehouse location and made the entire building brand new. It had gone from an old crumbly brick to a new beautiful brick building. Here they would launch one of the most massive office supply companies that would ever be built. Aya prepared thousands of pre-printed office supply catalogs to be mailed out. She had a list of all the possible customers that she would be targeting. Once Paul and Mary had graduated and was oriented in their positions as manager and assistant manager, they then mailed out all of the catalogs. Since Aya could create all the supplies that were needed, she was able to undercut everybody and still make a fantastic profit at the same time. This would stir trouble, she knew, but this was only the beginning. Aya would go on to build additional companies producing different products, all performing the same way as the office supply business would be run. The following Saturday morning, Aya got up to go see about her new warehouse and how she could make last-minute improvements. She needed to do this before they opened the doors officially Monday morning. She was suddenly inundated with about 24 reporters, flashbulbs going off, paper and pencil in hand, each eager to ask her questions. The first reporter asked, "Is it true that at Harvard University you answered all 3 of the outstanding questions that the university had asked?" "Why yes," said Aya, "in fact I answered 4 of them. 3 official, and 1 unofficial mathematical equation. Each said to be almost impossible to answer. I answered all 4. So how did such a little girl such as yourself become so smart?" Aya said, "Mathematics just comes naturally to me. It's just like eating or breathing. To me it is ever so simple." Now mind you, Harvard has not officially announced whether my mathematical journals were accurate or not. Only, the unofficial mathematical question was verified to be accurate. So we're just going to have to wait and see what the end results are going to be. One reporter asked, "Is it true that you're going to get a PhD in mathematics this coming spring?" Again Aya said, "Nothing is official as of yet. Again, we'll just have to wait and see, because I don't know as of yet. So it would be premature for me to make a statement at this time." One of the other reporters asked, "What about this warehouse you bought recently? And how did you get the money together to buy such a massive place?" Aya replied, "The money was very simple. I inherited it from my grandfather who lived in Europe. I will not disclose which country, for privacy reasons. But I will tell you that a vast majority of the wealth has been transferred here to America." One of the other reporters asked, "What kind of business are you going to do in this warehouse?" Aya then replied, "I'm going to start an office supply wholesale, retail business. I've already gone down to the courthouse and established an LLC license. I've gone to the county seat and established all tax forms and fulfilled all parameters required by the government." Another reporter asked, "How do you plan to compete with all the present wholesale giants?" "I have several very good sources of extremely high-quality product that are selling it to me sub-wholesale. Therefore I can sell wholesale at approximately the same price and sometimes slightly below. I have full faith and confidence that within 2 years, this business will be running very smoothly and have many satisfied customers." One of the reporters asked, "What are your overall plans for the near future?" Aya said, "Well, First time we'll get my business off the ground, and then I will pursue going to college rather than wade through elementary school." There was a general laugh among the reporters. One will ask the question, "What makes you think that any college would have you?" "Well," said Aya, "I just answered 4 mathematical questions that full-grown men and women with PhDs have not been able to answer for almost 3 decades. The fourth one was said to be even harder than the rest. They said that many good mathematicians spent their entire lives trying to figure it out. They said there's the formula on the blackboard, give it a try and see what you can do. I finished it in 2 minutes and 2 seconds flat. Also, I've taken the admissions test at a local college, and I scored extremely high." One of the other reporters chimed in, "Yeah, you just aced both the SAT and ACT entrance exams to Harvard University. And I've got it on good authority that you have aced all 3 of those mathematical challenges that the university had put up thinking no one could possibly answer them. Well, should Harvard choose to allow me to go to school there, I will go there and work full-time as a student, and also work full-time in my business. In college, unlike elementary school, I can go to school Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and work on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Or I can go Tuesdays and Thursdays and work Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Whichever way that I have to work it, that's the way I'll do it." The reporters continued to ask questions along these lines, delving as deep into her business as I would allow them to do so. She explained that she's starting off using a temp agency to get her feet off the ground, and then would hire full-time bookkeepers and certified public accounting firms to keep all of her records straight so that she could both make a profit and pay all the taxes and do all the things that it is required by good solid American business. One of the reporters closed with a final question to Aya, "Is there any truth in the rumor that you have computing machinery?" "Yes," said Aya, "it is a proprietary computing machine of my personal creation. It is designed to assist us in bookkeeping. Also in record keeping. This is very essential, as if we start getting a very large clientele, conventional methods would be overwhelmed. So yes, there will be computing machinery in the warehouse. I am in the process of using bookkeepers from my local commercial college and training them in how to use these machines. They will do the record keeping, billing, bookkeeping, and all other necessary record keeping for both business and tax purposes." The same reporter asked, "How have you gotten so smart if you're only 4.5 years old? This is an impossibility. There are people with master's degrees and PhDs that couldn't come up with some of the things that is said that you have invented." Aya hesitated for just a moment, "But I have. And it works. That's all that really matters. It works. I have to go to the warehouse now, so I will see you gentlemen later." Aya had arrived at the warehouse, unlocked it, and went in looking around to see what else she needed to add on to her new business. She had gone over things with a fine-tooth comb, but felt still there was something missing. Then suddenly 2 FBI agents showed up behind her and said, "Halt. We want to question you." Aya turned around and looked straight at the 2 FBI agents and said, "Show me your written warrant, please. I invoke the 4th Amendment. This is not a consensual encounter. I do not consent to any searches not documented in the written search warrant. Anything else is illegal." The 2 FBI agents looked at her and says, "We just want to ask questions." Aya stated that she was going to invoke her 6th Amendment rights to have legal counsel present during any and all questioning. Aya also stated she invoked her 8th Amendment, 13th Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights. The 13th Amendment questioned one of the agents. "Yes," said Aya. "Involuntary servitude and peonism. We're taking you downtown for questioning," stated one of the agents. "Not without my attorney present. I will not answer any questions whatsoever, and I do not consent to this encounter." The FBI agents had never heard anyone speak like this, so they grabbed her and put her in the paddy wagon, which happened to be a very crude gasoline engine-powered vehicle. "I demand legal counsel," said Aya. "Am I under arrest? Am I being detained?" The agent looked at her and said, "Yes, you are being detained for questioning for matters of national security." "Well, if you are going to do that, at least lock the door so nobody will vandalize my building, please. Otherwise I'll have to sue you for all the damages that you're doing." "We don't have to do anything you say." "Ah, but you entered my building without a warrant. That nullifies any and everything that takes place. So therefore you are actually kidnapping me, as you do not have a specific warrant with specific wording for your actions. This is non-consensual encounter, and I demand my attorney present during any and all questioning, otherwise you are not getting a word out of me." After several hours of intense interrogation, withholding water, food, bathroom privileges, or a phone call to her attorney, Miss Aya had a stomach full of it all. She looked at the FBI agent, held up both hands in front of her, and materialized a booklet. She seated the booklet on the table. Mr. Bureau Man, within the confines of this binder you'll find photographs, exacting details, contact information, and a whole lot of things you didn't know about the Bureau's most wanted man. All that information are within the pages of that booklet. I'm getting tired of this, and I'm hungry. I need to go to the bathroom, and you're being obnoxious, and you are violating my Sixth Amendment rights. And by the way, you're wrong. Green card carrier individuals do have constitutional rights. You need to go back to Quantico. And with that, Aya closed her eyes and teleported back to the warehouse. As Aya teleported back inside the warehouse, she very carefully looked around to see if anyone had stolen anything, vandalized anything, or was just snooping around in general. All was quiet on the home front. She went and checked the door. It had not been locked yet. She went back to the office to make sure that all the computers were in place and no one had vandalized them, or the printers, or the server. She became very worried. Such lax attention in securing the scene by America's most prestigious law enforcement, and the fact that they would take a little girl, leave her business wide open to be stolen blind, all without any concern, this did not sit well with Aya. While the FBI man had been interrogating her for several hours, Aya had formulated a plan. She created a booklet of all the violations that the FBI had created against her, taking her away from her business, leaving it unlocked to be vandalized, and other scandalous information. She reinforced this with 8x10 photographs accompanied by 4x5 press negatives. This way they could publish it in the newspaper should they choose to do so. Being that she had answered Harvard's biggest questions, started a business, and had the general public at her back, they would not be quite so vicious in their approach to her in the future she had hoped. She had sent it to the local newspaper as well as several large papers around the country. She made sure that it would sit on the editor-in-chief's desk that very day by teleporting it to their desk directly. It was early Sunday morning. Everyone had gone to church but her. She said she just wanted to stay home and mentally prepare for tomorrow as it would be the big day. Suddenly, as she is swinging in the porch swing thinking about what she was going to do, 2 FBI agents reappeared on the porch. "Miss Aya," said the FBI man, "we did know that you did have constitutional rights. We just wanted to see if we could buffalo you into answering our questions." She says, "I knew that. In fact, that there was a one-way mirror to the left of us that several people behind it were looking and listening to the entire event." "How did you know that?" said one of the FBI men. "Very simple, you have not used one-way mirrors very much, I can see, as you forgot and left the light on in the other room, allowing the images of 15 federal agents' silhouettes casting a shadow on the one-way mirror. You need to remember that the light on the interrogation room needs to be brighter than the one in the observation room. I realized one-way mirrors have only been on the market for about 3 or 4 years now, and I realize you're just getting used to them." "Oh, I see," said one of the FBI men. "Well, the reason that we're here today is those 15 observers saw you create a booklet out of thin air. Contain more information about the Bureau's most wanted than we have in our own files. That makes you a national security concern. Please allow me to correct you. You see, I just proved to you that I have become an asset to the Bureau, and providing I win the bid, you will become one of my customers in the office supply business. You remember the one that come in and violate my Fourth Amendment rights, then kidnapped me and took me to your office violating my Sixth Amendment rights. Okay, we're going to let bygones be bygones. You just need to realize I'm fixing to become one of your biggest assets. So we need to keep this on the down low. Every few days you can send a courier or one of your agents by and I will give you a new booklet containing the next level of the Bureau's most wanted list. I knew sooner or later you would get curious and want to know what's going on. I can't afford for you to disrupt my business or my college education. So I'm going to compromise. I'm going to become your CI. No, not criminal informant, citizen informant. Because of my age, you're going to have to keep it on the down low. But you'll be getting a great deal of information over the next few years. Okay, let me get this straight. You're gonna be our informant, and you're gonna sell us office supplies wholesale?" "Yes, that is correct," said Aya. "It's a marriage made in heaven. You get all the information you need on the people and events that you want to know about, and information on those you don't even know anything about yet, but they will come to your attention complete with proof in hand. Also, you'll be able to buy extremely high-quality office supplies, better than the ones you're paying for right now. It's going to be a win-win situation for both of us." So just relax, trust me, this is going to be a beautiful relationship over the next few years. Well, if we're going to work together, said the FBI man, we're going to need to know some things before we can proceed any further. Number one, how are you able to make things just appear out of thin air? How you are able to just vanish without a trace? And how do you know all of this information? Well, number one, you want to know how I'm able to make all these things. I know more about physics than your best PhD here on Earth. I use what is known as tri-quantum physics and tri-quantum mechanics. I can use the power of my mind to take matter, tear it apart all the way down to the submolecular level, resequence it into molecules, then build the molecules into whatever it is I need. How do I vanish? With the power of my mind, I can teleport anywhere in the world at any time that I wish. I can also teleport other people and other objects as well. Last but not least, again, both quantum physics and tri-quantum mechanics, I can see probable outcomes with 96% accuracy. You see, I didn't actually know the information firsthand, but the quantum mechanics and tri-quantum mechanics, I merely remembered the rest. Now I know that sounds like a lot of garbled mishmash. You see, I didn't just write it down for you, I remembered it into existence. I've already been there, I just haven't arrived yet. I remember because the stars do. I just listened. Again, I realize this sounds like double talk, but unless you fully understand quantum physics and tri-quantum physics, there's no way for you to actually understand how I'm able to do what I do. Well, we're going to burn you, a little girl, we're going to burn you bad. Because in reality, green card carriers, especially refugee status here in the United States, you don't have jack squat as far as rights are concerned. You just think you do. You should study up a little more on our laws before you speak. The FBI agents then turned and left, stating, we'll be back, and we're going to make your life a living hell. Scandal. Harvard says they wash their hands of Miss Irene Rowe. This is despite the fact that she has accurately answered each and every mathematics question asked of her with great precision and accuracy. Miss Irene Rowe is being investigated by Federal Bureau and overseen by the Justice Department. It seems that Miss Irene Rowe, a refugee and an orphan, is of an extremely brilliant mind. However, Miss Rowe is under investigation because agency allegations says she has powers that are beyond anything the average person has. They declared a national emergency and has put Miss Rowe under investigation. Miss Irene Rowe is being indicted for endangerment of the United States of America and other national security concerns. This is despite that Miss Rowe being only 4½ years of age. Everything that Miss Aya owns has been seized. Miss Aya is now being held in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. She is being denied an attorney at law as refugee orphans do not have a right to an attorney at this time. Miss Aya is declared an enemy of the state. She is being seen as a hostile actor against the United States of America and is being treated as such. This comes even after Miss Aya had given the Federal Bureau an incredible amount of information on how to catch America's most wanted and offered to help the Bureau capture numerous other persons of interest. Rumors from different federal agencies say they believe her to be an alien from another world. Retaliation is highly suspected, because Aya had somehow smuggled out photographs and a transcript of exactly what each FBI agent had said during her original interrogation. The Bureau sees this as a national security breach. There's beginning to become a national outrage that the Bureau and the Justice Department would do such things to an orphan, and a refugee at that. And for someone to be as brilliant as she is, the government is going to destroy the mind of someone that can answer mathematical and scientific questions no one else has ever been able to answer before. Word has leaked out of the Bureau that they plan to dissect Miss Aya to find out what makes her tick. X-rays reveal that Miss Aya has 3 brain lobes, 2 hearts, 4 kidneys, and 2 pancreas. Outcries from the public for doing such things to a little child is a scandal. And the Justice Department has nothing further to say to the general public about this issue. Aya smuggles a manifesto to the press by teleporting the letter to, perhaps via a sympathetic telegraph operator or a rogue suffragette journalist. It reads, I am not of your world, but I am not your enemy. I am a child, just 4½ years old. I am a mind greater than anything you have ever known. I am a mirror. If you destroy me, you destroy your future. I was created in a test tube using multiple bone marrow extractions. I carried the genetic code of 315 different species of humanoid. I carry only the best parts of each of these species. They created me in hopes that I could come to Earth, eventually get married, and have children and in part carry just a tiny fraction of their genetic makeup through my family. They are all dead now. A nearby star went supernova, then collapsed on itself, and then turned into a black hole of which nothing can escape. Not even light. I am the last of my kind. I am the only one of my kind. When I die, 315 civilizations go extinct. The public, already reeling from war and inequality, begins to see her as a symbol of hope or divine intervention. You fear me because I'm not like you. But I've seen what happens when you let fear make your choices. If you won't let me help you, perhaps I'll help someone else. There's a man in Germany. Adolf. He's wounded now, but he dreams of empires and conquest. He loves little girls with blonde hair and blue eyes. I could be his angel of war. Or, you can let me work for you. I'll build machines that will end this war in months. I'll give you radios that whisper across oceans, engines that fly without wings, armor that bends bullets. But I want autonomy. I want my businesses back, my money, and I want my freedom. This forces the Bureau and the Justice Department into a corner. If they say no, they risk her defecting to a foreign power. And who is the Adolf fellow? If they say yes, they must admit they were wrong and give a 4.5-year-old alien orphan the keys to the war machine. There was a secret vote among the president's cabinet. One faction wants to dissect her. Another wants to use her. A third fears her either way. The room fell silent. The Secretary of War wiped his brow. She's bluffing, he muttered. But the president wasn't so sure. Aya stood with sneakers on the prison floor, in jeans, and a blouse, her eyes glowing faintly. I don't bluff, she said. I calculate. In 1916, a laser-guided bazooka would be indistinguishable from magic, yet Aya framed it as science, just not their science. Let's build this weapon as a cinematic and plausible artifact of her alien intellect. Aya demonstrates the weapon, the Lucerna Lance. A shoulder-fired, laser-guided explosive launcher that locks onto targets using a beam of coherent light, Aya's version of a laser. Fires a compact, high-yield round with pinpoint accuracy. Is lightweight, silent, and reusable. To avoid triggering disbelief, Aya explains it using terms they can grasp. Lucerna, Latin for light, she calls it a light-guided lance. Aya describes the laser as a focused beam of heat and direction. The guidance system uses gyroscopic stabilization and magnetic targeting. You call it a bazooka. I call it a whisper of precision. It sees your enemy before you do. And it never misses. Aya stood in the courtyard of the military prison, the strange tube resting on her shoulder. A dummy tank sat 300 yards away. She whispered to the weapon in a language no one understood. A beam of light flickered. Then, silence. A flash. The tank vanished in a bloom of dust. And fire. No recoil. No sound. Just precision. I can make 10,000 of these, she said. If you let me. Aya's tactical pivot, from threat to savior. The demonstration of the weapon on the battlefield. Aya unveils the Lucerna Lance, a shoulder-fired, light-guided explosive launcher live on the battlefield. But she doesn't just show it off in a lab. She teleports to a battlefield in Europe, where American troops are pinned down, and uses it to neutralize a German artillery nest with one shot. Save an entire platoon without harming civilians. Leave behind a note, this is what I can do. Choose wisely. The footage, captured by a war correspondent, is smuggled back to Washington and published in the New York Times. Public opinion flips overnight. The strategic offer. You fear me. But your enemies would worship me. I could give Germany machines that fly without wings, bombs that think, and radios that whisper across oceans. Or I could give you victory. Let me work. Let me live. I'll build you an arsenal that ends this war in 6 months or less. She offers to include blueprints for a prototype that uses compressed plasma and magnetic guidance, just enough to prove her genius, but not enough to replicate without her. The political fallout. Congress demands a hearing. The Justice Department is forced to justify her imprisonment. A rogue senator, inspired by her leaked interrogation transcript, calls for her release and proposes the Aya Accord, a legal framework to classify her as a non-human intelligence under protective custody. Aya's terms. She agrees to help under 3 conditions. Autonomy, she chooses her own guardian and living quarters. Enterprise, She's allowed to run her own businesses. Diplomatic status, she's recognized as a sovereign entity. Not a citizen. Not a prisoner. And full diplomatic immunity. The president stared at the blueprint. This isn't from Earth, he whispered. The Secretary of War leaned in. Sir, if she gives this to the Germans, we're done. I stated to them, I don't want war. I want purpose. Let me build. Or watch me vanish into the arms of those who will enslave you. I offers to demonstrate a remote control jet aircraft loaded to bear ready to fight, that their pilots could occupy. She would build trainers for the would-be pilots, so they could learn how to fly the jet and not die accidentally crashing it. This would allow them to have a look and feel of the jet in simulation. Then there would be the actual flight in which she would be co-pilot correcting any errors that the test pilot would be making. Once she got this pilot fully trained and fully knowledgeable of the aircraft, that pilot then would in turn train others. She stated that only the United States of America can own this aircraft. No other country may own it. This is a highly sophisticated weapon of war. They agreed to a demonstration. I had the F-18 flying by remote control, and did a flyby over about 2,000 feet off the ground. At Mach 1.6. The sonic boom was enormous. The general standing there said, "Dear God, what in the name of all that is holy created that?" That, sir, was a sonic boom as it went faster than the speed of sound. 1.6 times the speed of sound, in fact. Those little popping Johnny biplanes that Germany has, they are only topping out at 97 miles an hour. We could just fly by and destroy the aircraft, using jet wash, without even thinking about it. We can send missiles out to destroy buildings, and we can drop bombs to destroy military installations, as well as ammunition factories and fuel refineries. The decision is yours. I can make 3,000 of these in one afternoon should you choose to have them manufactured by me. The next aircraft controlled by remote control was the Globemaster. Its primary function is cargo and troop transport. The Globemaster measures 174 feet long with a wingspan of 169 feet, 10 inches. The aircraft is powered by 4 turbofan engines with a maximum thrust of 40,440 pounds, each engine. Maximum payload capacity of the Globemaster is 170,900 pounds, with a payload of 164,900 pounds in an initial cruise altitude of 28,000 feet. Speed is 450 knots at 28,000 feet. Service ceiling and at 45,000 feet at cruising speed of 440 knots. Maximum takeoff weight is 585,000 pounds. This is a tough ship. It can land on dirt runways, gravel runways, or standard tarmac. It's valuable for transporting just about anything you could possibly want. This includes troops, and has a parachute capability, so that each individual, when they jump out of the plane, their parachute instantly deploys, and they safely float to the ground. The same can be done with airdrops. We put the supplies on a skid and tie a parachute to the end of it. When the load is deployed from the aircraft, the parachute catches the wind and slows the descent of the package to the ground, thus reducing the probability of damage to the supplies that are being delivered to the target location. All right, said the other generals, we're caught between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, we are offered superior aircraft and weaponry. All of this is offered to us at ridiculously low price. This, or she can teleport to Germany, hook up with this Adolf guy, this know-nothing that she's talking about, and he takes over the world. Then we become his slave? What I want to know is, who in the H got this started? It was one of the bureau men. He got a burr up his backside, and decided he was going to make her life a living hell. And we're in this mess because of a bureau man. Yeah, and then the Justice Department jumped in on it. And that is when it compounded the problem, made it much worse. Okay, let me get this straight. She had already started a business, mailed out thousands of catalogs, hired people, had product in the warehouse, and we walked in and destroyed her world. And now she's showing us what she can do with alien voodoo, which none of us can do. My God, what have we got ourselves into? Do you realize that the Bureau and the Justice Department has just made us the laughingstock of the world? How in the H are we going to recover from this political and media disaster? At the moment, we're the most powerful country in the world, and we can be snuffed out because of some agent has a burr in his backside. This is a nightmare. We need to fix this, and fix this fast. All of the other generals from all the other branches of the military agreed wholeheartedly. We need what she's got. We need to return to her what was hers, and see if we can't do a little PR to get her business back up and going. Because I can tell you this, it won't take much for her to jump ship, go to Germany and give them all the power of the world. They're looking for a global conquest as it is. This Adolf person, whoever in the heck he is, has created paper called Mein Kampf. I read the translation of this madman's purpose, and his plan, if she jumps into his arms, will all be either dead or enslaved. He has visions of German people being the superior people of the world. He wants to promote blonde-haired and blue-eyed people as the superior race and begin exterminating the other races around the world. If this little washed-up corporal ever does rise to power, the whole world is gonna be in really big trouble. And with her powers, if she teleports through 20 foot of concrete like it was not there, and teleports right to Germany, then this world won't be worth living in. The deliberations went on for more than 5 hours. A consensus was made to restore Aya and her businesses, and return all of her money that she had in the bank. One of the generals says, "Oh my God. Did you see how much money that little girl has?" While the other general says, "Yeah, it's enough to fund a small country. By all means, let us all take advantage of her forgiveness of this. Take advantage of our good fortune of having a second chance remaining the superpower of the world. Let's get this done, and get it done fast." The Federal Bureau fired the 2 agents that started all this problem. They assigned a new agent to her side until otherwise stated. Her business had been restored, everything back in its place, everything working as it should. She managed to obtain all of her previously trained employees, and the orders began coming in much faster than she thought that they would. It appeared that this was going to be glorious, as every government agency in the country was ordering from Aya. Not only did she have the best products, widest variety, but she had at substantially lower prices than anybody else in the country. This qualified for the lowest bid. Aya had to go out and hire additional people through the temp agency just to keep up. The way she had it set up this way was, because of the union rules, you have a 90-day grace period to see if you're going to work out. If you do, you're a permanent hire and a union employee. We will treat you well here. Everything appeared as if everything was going to turn out okay for Aya. You thought I was dangerous. But I was trying to protect you. The war is already here. You just haven't seen it yet. It's more horrible than anything that you've ever seen or experienced in the last 10 decades. She offers a fleet of jets ready to patrol the coasts. A predictive system that can intercept coded messages before they're sent through a quantum entanglement code detection box. A plan to neutralize enemy agents using her spy network of drones and digital telegraph operators, leaving the rest of the world in analog noise. The realization. The generals stared at the digital map. Red dotted locations the East Coast. How did she know? One whispered. Aya stepped forward, her voice calm. Because I've seen this war before. And if you don't let me fight it, you'll lose everything. For the next several weeks Aya worked with the Globe Master pilots and their crews, training one crew after another, making sure that they were properly proficient in their job. The men got to saying that they were having a ball flying this thing. It was a little intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's a lot of fun to fly. They were looking forward to their first airdrop in the World War I theater. The Globe Master lifted off the tarmac with the gentlest of ease and the greatest of precision. Soon each team was teaching a new team how to fly the Globe Master. And soon they were in formation flying a squadron of cargo planes, anxious to get into the war to keep America safe. In between teaching the Globe Master pilots and the other squadrons, she was also training the F-18, the F-16 and the F-22 Raptor pilots how to fly their aircraft. These were a little more intimidating. And most newbies threw up their hands and wanted to give up. However, there were some brave souls that says I'll fly. She trained these volunteers and they became expert jet pilots that were doing maneuvers so terrifying, even Aya was scared. To try them, Aya introduced the Warthog. This was a machine unlike anything the world had ever seen, a Gatling gun. They could shoot 3,600 bullets a minute, 20 caliber, they were armor-piercing. These were tank killers. Not only could they use the Gatling gun, but they could drop bombs, and even carry missiles with high-yield explosives. At a top speed of 420 miles per hour. This was the death machine of the German tanks, and the Serbian nationalist that started this war. Dear God, did you see what that A-10 Warthog did? I've never seen anything like it, said one of the other generals. It takes your breath away. Well, at least we have this on our side. Yes, there are several men now being trained on how to fly this thing. We've got simulators, and then real-life flights to test their skills. We're also cross-training some of the jet fighter pilots to fly the Warthog, as they have jet fighter experience. They say it's a dream to fly, and an absolute adrenaline rush when they pull the trigger. The gun is so powerful, it almost stops the aircraft in mid-flight. Yes, she told us not to be complacent. Not to just say, okay, we've got the best machines and the best men, but we also need the best strategy. Gentlemen, we need to take what we've learned and build on this, drawing all of our experiences to win this war and shut it down quickly. Germany invades Luxembourg and Belgium. France invades Alsace. British forces arrive in France. Nations allied against Germany were eventually to include Great Britain, Russia, Italy, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, Rhodesia, Romania, Greece, France, Belgium, United States, Canada, Serbia, India, Portugal, Montenegro, and Poland. They have F-14, F-15, F-16, F-18, and the F-22 Raptor as well as the Globemaster went into action. Several Globemasters have been reconfigured to act as refueling stations midair. For the first time the world had ever witnessed mid-air refueling by jet aircraft. This was unprecedented. Let's make sure all our men are thoroughly trained on these aircraft, and what was the name of that new aircraft carrier she created? The Absolution. It's big enough to carry 8,000 crewmen, and has a steam catapult with a runway 800 feet long. Normally the best anyone could do is 200 to 300 feet on a runway. But this ship is so enormous, it can easily carry 800 feet. And the propulsion, nobody has ever seen a water jet system that can move an entire swimming pool of water in just a few seconds. This ship can move 30 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of water in 1 minute. The speed can reach 70 knots top speed, and a cuddly slam on the brakes in just 5 lengths of the ship at that speed without capsizing. Well, gentlemen, we may actually be able to put this thing to bed in less than 1 year. Once they see the destructive firepower that we carry, they'll have to surrender. They'll have to give up the ghost. All of the generals took a vote on the most likely scenario that would win this war quickly and cost the fewest men and resources doing so. Once everything started smoothing out, and she had enough men trained to train other men, she decided, I'm going to need a place to stay. Aya had realized that the boarding house will no longer take her. And she thought, what a shame. So Aya then decided to go to Boston Harbor, and here she created a 440-foot super yacht. It was sleek, elegant, and the world's first hydrofoil-style ship. It had a top speed of 180 miles per hour. It was super maneuverable, and used hydraulic ramjets to propel the ship. The ship could even stop within 3 lengths of the ship going at a clip of 70 knots. Once she shook out all the bugs, and did her initial cruise, she decided it was time to have a small party, and invite all the upper echelon of Boston. She catered it with the finest foods on the planet, and hired temporary waiters to wait upon the elite of Boston. About 1/3 of the invitations came. The rest were a bit weary, or just plain scared of Aya. After all, who is this 4-year-old girl that wields such industrial power? The 1/3 that did come were amazed, delighted, and seemed to enjoy themselves thoroughly. Liquor flowed, and food was overabundant. It turned out to be a smashing success. The next day, Aya had decided to clean up and restore the ship to new. She needed to re-establish herself in this world, and she was gonna do everything in her power to make people more comfortable with her, trust her, and enjoy rubbing elbows. The gods of war. America, truly the gods of war. Total and absolute domination of the war theater takes place in a single day. Unbelievable destruction. Mysterious mist is thrown over the war theater like a dust storm. Guns, pistols, cannons, and tanks are completely made ineffective. Great confusion throughout the theater. Troops are forced into hand-to-hand combat, while American and allied countries are unaffected. Troops are surrendering in droves. The war may be over in just days. Intelligence tells us that the Roe Avionics Corporation has mass-produced these terrors of war. The enemy cannot believe their eyes, as aircraft fly overhead faster than the speed of sound. They drop ordnances with pinpoint precision. There's no way to resist such awesome power. The impossible weapon demonstration. Aya unleashes the F-14, the F-15, the F-16, F-18, F-22, and the Globemaster. They do aerial bombardments over the entire war theater, knocking out enemy combatants' strongholds. Effect: generals believe a new superweapon has entered the war. And it has. Multiple superweapons and superior aircraft. The fear of it forces peace talks. The peace virus strategy. Aya releases a nanotech mist, or a biochemical agent disguised as a natural phenomenon, that temporarily disables gunpowder, which in effect jams cannons, rifles, and pistols. Effect: armies are forced into hand-to-hand combat, which slows the war and increases calls for peace. The mist is actually a test. Aya is gauging humanity's response to forced disarmament. Everyone else's aircraft are extremely primitive, propellers made of wood, bodies made of fabric, machine guns synchronized with the propellers. America now has air superiority. The enemy is in the trenches, combat theaters, and airfields. Cities are wiped out without resistance. There's psychological shock, and the soldiers now see something faster than the speed of sound, dropping precision explosives. The morale falls flat. It even triggers mass desertions and panic. The other side has absolutely no defense whatsoever. In 1916, the industry could not reproduce these machines. Metallurgy for jets was impossible, computers, radar impossible, avionics or fuel systems, let alone the impossible precision machining capabilities and possible effectively gods of war. Industrial and scientific fallout take place. A century's worth of acceleration would have nations pouring efforts into doing reverse engineering. But it is too advanced. There is a massive power imbalance. This leads to massive suppression of rival powers. Overnight, it completely alters the global history. This now leads to religious and cultural upheavals. Ordinary people living in 1916 sees technology as divine or demonic. New cults appear, mass hysteria is everywhere, and there is a resistance to unnatural signs. The world is not ready for the political chaos and misuse of superweapons, thus there is a misunderstanding of the technology and leads to an early societal collapse. The war has ended. America and Allied troops began returning home. Peace treaties have been signed, and rebuilding European theater has begun. America, the gods of war, begin in the assistance of rebuilding the European theater. The enemy now realizes that it is futile to try to continue with this awful war. Thus they accept America and their allies' offers assistance in rebuilding their countries. This stimulates the global economy. Trade between countries are restored and enhanced. Gentlemen, our soldiers are beginning to call her the angel of the trenches. American hospitals want to adopt her medical technology. This has led to survival rates that have never seen before. The European leaders are demanding access to this healing science, but Aya warns us that this technology is not a gift. It's a responsibility. We need to keep this science and technology she has created for rapid healing close to our vest for now. We want everybody else to come here for survival, and not allow it to get out of our hands. Who knows what someone else would do with this science? It could be turned into a massive weapon of destruction rather than a massive tool of healing. You're absolutely right. It's being called the resurrection shock. Soldiers that were in the field suddenly come back to life. This is impossible. Well, she says that once they're dead she can't bring them back, but as long as they got a heartbeat the machinery can, how did she put it, start doing structural repairs to the human body in a rapid pace. This has saved millions of our soldiers. It's also saved hundreds of thousands of our allies. Gentlemen, we now have a tool that we must keep close to the vest. This allows us to go to war and reduce the casualties to almost nothing. People will not be so reluctant to join the Army, Navy, Air Force, or the Marine Corps. They'll realize that they can come back home even after being damaged severely, and be better than brand new in many cases. Yes, but something disturbing is beginning to happen. Religious leaders from all over the world are calling her a heretic, a witch, a sorceress, the devil and a demon. There is even a call for an exorcism of this young child. I am not sure what we can do about it. This is fixing to get out of hand, gentlemen. We need to stand by and be prepared to do, well, what I have no idea. But Miss Aya is a national treasure as she keeps bringing us new science and technology that we've never even dreamed of, or even thought of in our science fiction stories. What was science fiction and fantasy at one time is now a science reality. We must protect it at all cost. Many of the major hospitals in the United States began to installing the new healing machines. This was not just a tissue regenerator, but an entire body cellular restructuring machine. It could go and look at your DNA, rewrite every cell in your body, and you would come out exactly the way your DNA originally wrote you. Total health. A cure for cancer, bringing you back from a near-death experience, auto-wreck, battlefield wounds, and so much more. MASH units owned by the United States had these machines in portable format as well as portable CAT scan and handheld dermal regeneration devices. These are now being used in all of the major American hospitals in every major city in the United States. People from all over the world are traveling to the United States to be cured of diseases, injuries, and wounds that just refuse to heal. It becomes a boon for the American economy. While people are here in America, they spend their money at hotels, restaurants, shops, and so much more. The religious churches from around the country and around the world began to congregate to confront Aya. They began to question her and tell her that she was a witch, a sorceress, used black magic, voodoo, and every other form of evil that they could possibly dream up. Aya confronts them back. She says exactly what is a witch. Well, allow me to tell you. I have spoken to so-called witches to see what I'm being accused of. First they have to denounce God. Then they have to align themselves with an evil spirit. They themselves cannot do anything, but they contract with the evil spirit to do their bidding. Then when they die, instead of going to heaven, they join the demon in hell. There they will be the eternal slave of the demon in exchange for their rewards here on earth. You should already know that whenever Jesus Christ died and bled and dripped his blood upon the earth, that all the demons and black magic and sorcery was limited to a scant percentage of what they originally were. They do not have this power. So, where does all my power come from? It comes from a computer chip. Now I realize you don't know what a computer chip is, so I will tell you this. It is a piece of electronics smaller that the size has been reduced down to a molecular size, and is no bigger than my thumbnail. It was implanted into my brain to help me do all the things I am now doing, plus store knowledge and compress that knowledge into a small part of my brain so that I can have millions of times the volume of knowledge that you have in your brain. Now you can call me whatever you want, but the scientists of my world took the bone marrow of the most powerful humanoids in our part of the galaxy. They introduced 315 other species DNA, which is the building blocks that create life, and they mixed it together. They then introduced a special clay, from a world that they said life and our part of the universe began. They stimulated the cells of the bone marrow began to divide, and I am the result. I am an amalgamation of 315 species in all. Only the very most desirable traits were allowed to be filtered through the process. To you I am something unholy, but trust me, I do have a soul. Not everything in the universe is exactly as you think. I am not about to downplay your religion, but you do not have the scientific knowledge that my people had. You are approximately 14,000 years behind us. Is there a God? Of course there is. The religion of my world closely resembles that of your own. I have read your King James Bible, the Geneva Bible, and the Sefer Bible, and the Ethiopian Bible. I know what you know. I believe a great deal of what you believe. So I am not evil. I am here to help, not to harm, not to conquer, not to put your religions down, but merely to exist in peace and tranquility with all of humanity. Everything is made of patterns of energy and thought. When I understand the patterns perfectly, I can call it into being. It isn't magic, it's harmony with the universe and its natural rhythm. I see you are very skeptical. Let us go to the hospital where I've installed these machines that you call heresy. There's a little girl that's in the process of dying from a very terrible and horrible disease. I want you to see how these machines actually work. There's no voodoo, no chants, no charms, no nothing of the evil that you proclaim I do. Just remember it, bearing false witness against someone else is a sin. You say God made the world from nothing, well so do I. Only I shape what he already placed within me. Isn't understanding his creation a form of worship? Here I'll show you how I'm able to do everything I'm able to do. This is a representation of my brain. See that little square over on the side? That is what is called a microchip. when it's connected to an organic organ such as the brain, is then referred to as a biochip. Now I realize because I was not made by God in the conventional manner, that I was created in a laboratory, and I have this foreign device implanted into my organic brain, you're seeing me as an abomination. I know this, and I accept it. There's no way I can convince you otherwise, and I know so. But what I do want you to know, I'm not a witch. I do not practice witchcraft. I do not practice any of the dark arts. I merely use my brain to think about dismantling trash, resequencing the atoms on a subatomic level. In other words, I'll break up the neutrons, the protons, the electrons, and the quarks that circle the electrons. Then I put them in different dimensions. Then when I need something, I call upon what I've stored. It makes different dimensions and reassemble them into atoms, and then make the atoms in the molecules. Yes, I know that is what would be considered as God-like, but I am not a god. I am not a demon, devil, or anything that is written in the Bible. I'm something that is brand spanking new. I'm a humanoid with an artificial implant that allows me to do things that other people cannot. So if you want to call me an abomination, then go ahead, because I can't stop you. Softly. You fear what you do not understand. So let me show you, not with words, but with action. She walks to a broken wooden chalice lying on the floor, discarded, splintered, symbolic. She kneels, places her hand over it. Her eyes flicker with a faint glow. Whispering, matter is not sacred. But intention is. The air hums. The splinters rise, rearranging midair. Molecules realign. Within seconds, the chalice is whole again, restored, not replaced. She sets it gently on the table. Bishop Thorn, furious. Blasphemy. You mimic miracles. You desecrate the sacred with your tricks. Imam Rashid, shaken. She did not summon spirits. She did not chant. She simply repaired. Rabbi Allah, stepping forward. This is not sorcery. This is stewardship. She did not create from nothing, she healed what was broken. Reverend Caldwell, to the others. If God gave us minds to heal the sick, why not minds to heal the world itself? Must we fear every new gift? Sister Agnes, tears in her eyes. I felt no evil. Only sorrow. And mercy. The council splinters. Thorn and his allies demand Aya's exile, calling her a false prophet. Ella, Caldwell, and Agnes argue for understanding, proposing a theological inquiry into her nature. Rashid remains torn, suggesting a period of observation and dialogue. The chamber erupts in debate. Aya remains silent, watching the storm. She's stirred. Aya is placed under spiritual observation, a kind of probation where she must live among the faithful and prove her intentions. A secret faction forms, those who believe Aya may be a divine test or messenger, and begin protecting her. Thorn begins a crusade, spreading fear and rallying others to hunt her down, setting up future conflict. Aya begins to teach quietly, to those willing to learn, blending science and ethics in a way that challenges old dogma. Reverend Caldwell, gentle, earnest. Aya, I want to believe you. But belief is not enough. People are afraid. They see you as a sign either of salvation or judgment. What do you see yourself as? Aya, measured. I see myself as a question. One that your world wasn't ready to ask. I didn't choose to be made this way. But I choose what I do with it. Rabbi Ella, leaning forward. You said you store atoms in other dimensions. That's not just science, it's metaphysics. Do you understand how you do it? Or is it instinct? Aya, pausing. It's both. The chip in my brain interfaces with quantum fields. I don't cast spells, I calculate probabilities. I don't summon, I retrieve. But yes, sometimes it feels like instinct. Like remembering something I never learned. Imam Rashid, thoughtful, reserved. In our traditions, there are beings created from light, from fire, from clay. You are made from code and flesh. That is new. But perhaps not unnatural. The question is, do you have a soul? Aya, quietly. I don't know. But I feel sorrow. I feel joy. I feel the weight of choice. If that is not a soul, then what is? A long silence. The candle flickers. Aya's words hang in the air. Reverend Caldwell. You may not be a prophet, but you are a mirror. You reflect our fears and our hopes. Rabbi Allah, and perhaps our arrogance. We thought we understood creation. You remind us we do not. Imam Rashid. Then let us not rush to condemn. Let us listen. Let us learn. The confrontation, Aya and the desperate mother. Setting, a dusty village square at dusk. Aya walks quietly, her cloak pulled tight. Whispers follow her. A woman breaks from the crowd, her face streaked with tears, clutching a limp child. Mother, desperate, trembling. They say you are a demon. That you twist atoms and steal souls. I don't care. My son is dying. Fever. No doctor will come. If you are a monster, then be my monster. Save him. Aya, softly. I am not a monster. But I will try. She kneels beside the child. Her fingers hover over his chest. She closes her eyes. Her biochip pulses faintly. She scans the molecular structure, identifies the infection, and begins to resequencing the damaged cells. Aya, whispering. I do not fight death. I restore balance. The child stirs. His breathing steadies. The fever breaks. The crowd gasps. Mother, weeping. You are not a demon. You are a miracle. A man in the crowd. She healed him, without medicine. That's not natural. But it was kind. And it worked. Bishop Thorne's spy, watching from the shadows. She grows stronger. The people will follow her. This must be stopped. When your ancestors saw lightning, they thought it was the wrath of the gods. When they learned of electricity, they called it progress. What I do now is no different. It's understanding the next layer of creation. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If love can make you heal inside, why can't knowledge help heal the body outside? In the Bible it says, Paul went in to see him and, after he had prayed, he laid his hands on him and healed him. Paul was a man. Yet when he went in to see the sick man, he prayed, and laid his hands upon him and man was healed. Now I'm not the disciple, I am not a religious figure, but I have the ability to heal. Heal by using microprocessor that was planted into my brain, and yes, I have faith. The preachers from churches all over the country began hollering, she's a demon, she's a devil, she's a sorceress, a being of great evil. So, multiple people throughout the country gathered up their axes, sledgehammers, and other tools, went to the hospitals that contained Aya's medical inventions. They began to destroy the equipment within each hospital. The doctors and nurses screamed, don't do this, it is life-saving equipment, we've got emergencies in progress, and people that need this equipment now. They will not be able to live if you destroy these machines. The people that lead the riots exclaimed, but our preacher says it's the work of the devil. And we must destroy it. Destroy it all. It's the devil's work. Once again Aya was taken into custody by the Justice Department and the Federal Bureau. Young lady, what you have done, while admirable, wonderful in fact. However, it has caused riots and destruction of property throughout hospitals, clinics, and other places in this country. It is caused by your inventions and technology. This cannot be tolerated. Aya spoke up and said, I understand this. The people of this world is not yet ready for my science, medical, or technological advancements. I knew it was a gamble. Anytime you bring new science and technology to a world that has not ever experienced such things, it seems like devil's work. This has been demonstrated throughout hundreds of other worlds. So I shall leave, since I am not a citizen of this country. I will just leave this country and I will take back all that I have created. And you will become as you once were. No more, no less, just as you were. I will leave this place. My heart grows heavy. I will leave. Aya then took back everything she had created. It was a moment of great sadness for her, for she had started a business, had a home with friends, helped stop a world war, provided free medical devices to hospitals and clinics around the country, all that would save lives and heal injuries, yet the people were not yet ready for such technologies. This was self-evident throughout other species throughout the centuries. Humanity was no different. I then noticed she could not pull her money out of the United States because everything was seized and locked down, and she made an agreement with the government that all of her monetary wealth in the banks would be donated to the Social Security Department. This would surely aid the elderly and the disabled in years to come. I had then set out on her yacht for the Atlantic Ocean just south of the equator. I would head toward the Namibian Shelf. The depths of the continental shelf here is relatively shallow, often under 300 feet before dropping off into the deep ocean. The South Atlantic gyre and prevailing winds make this region less vulnerable to atmospheric or oceanic contamination from the north. It was the perfect place to create a man-made island. She would mount her island right on the edge of the shelf, so that the southern end of the island would be in the deeper part of the ocean where the shelf dropped to greater than 1,000 feet. Here she would put her industrial complex, ideal for shipping. While it is far away from most shipping lanes, it would be ideal for transporting to South America, and the European nations. The waters were ideal. The amount of storms would be fewer than in other locations in the Atlantic Ocean. Here she would try and make a tropical paradise that everyone would like to come and visit, or even stay for long periods of time. She dreams of building this island and becoming queen. Since Aya had the tri-quantum microchip in her brain that allowed her to do matter resequencing, she decided to make a man-made island. They had done this on her home world, so she knew how it was done. What she would do is dredge up the dirt from around the area that was to be the island and turn it into sandstone, limestone, and iron ore. Thus she had a man-made island. The island measured 660 miles long, and was a width of 330 miles. The entire island had beautiful white sand beaches very much like the sands of White Sands, New Mexico. It was beautiful and pristine. The shoreline was deeper than most. Therefore the people that was on the island could run, frolic, and enjoy themselves immensely, and have more than enough beachfront property in which to relax and enjoy life. The southern end, within 30 miles of the business district, would have the industrial complex. Unlike ordinary industrial complexes, this would be a matter resequencing industrial complex. That way all the junk, trash, and pollution that man had created, or was creating, would be converted into useful products in which she could sell back to the rest of the world. This way she herself would not be polluting the world as the rest of mankind was doing. Scattered throughout the island were hospital and medical service complexes. Housing of all types will be available to those who choose to live here and work here. Each home would be able to create its very own electricity, fresh water, and all the amenities that would be available to mankind in the 21st century. She designed everything to be a paradise to the best of her ability. Fiber optic communications and microwave communications was the order of the day. Also, she created the world's first 6G communications network and introduced the world's first cell phone. This would be the showcase of the world. Once everybody understood how easy it was to use and why it would be practical to carry a phone on you, the rest of the world would then soon follow. She knew, however, that she was not to push this technology upon people but let them request that technology to be brought to their countries. For she had learned her lesson, and learned it very well. Aya then made a second island, one which would house her castle, and instead of having a business district, would have massive high-rise apartment complexes that were extremely spacious, and cutting-edge 22nd century stylized. All the homes and businesses would rent or lease from her. Aya did not want to sell any part of her island. This way electricity, water, gas, phone, internet, and all other amenities were included in the rent or the lease. This made everything practical, as you were not nickeled and dimed to death. The only way to the island in which the Queen's castle was located was by ferry. The ferries were extremely elaborate hydrofoil-style boats that would run people to and from her island to the primary island. One of the things that she also designed with her personal island was a 30th century style underwater complex. This complex was designed with natural disasters in mind. She realized that the Earth's magnetic poles would flip sometime between 2030 and 2075. The reason for this was the galactic geomagnetic excursion carried magnetic waves that the Earth would pass through every 26,400 years. This would in turn cause the Sun to go micronova. The reason for this is with the geomagnetic excursion came with a dust storm of galactic proportions. This is very much like the Earth does, passing through the asteroid field each fall. But this time the entire solar system would pass through a very dense dust and particle and asteroid field to the likes modern mankind had never seen. This way she could detach the island and allow it to float when it became necessary after the natural disaster took place. The underwater complex had a force field around it that would prevent any damage to either the island or the underwater complex. This was designed to house up to 325,000 people for the purpose of survival during this galactic event. This way mankind would have a fighting chance after everything settled down and returned to normal. The castle was grand and exotic, absolute exquisite in all of its splendor. Gold and pearl inlay. An impossible feat of brilliant architecture. The foyer entrance was of grand extravagance, entering into the grand hallway of elegance and exquisite beauty. The castle was made of gold, silver, pearl inlay, highly polished marble, and other exquisite design. Most majestic of all was Anya's bedroom. Here she could look out over the ocean, and the clouds that would float by her bedroom window. It was elegance stacked upon elegance, to the extreme. The invitation. Aya's island, now opens up to the world, the Rome Republic. Aya, now settled on her island, sends out a series of messages to the world. To the businessmen, the dreamers, the builders, the healers, and the forgotten. A new land awaits you. No personal income taxes, no property taxes, no value-added taxes. No kings. No war. Bring your skills, your hopes, your dreams, and your families. You will not be citizens, but legal residences. You will be free. We have a constitution that is very similar to the United States of America, but more refined. Aya's invitation includes coordinates, ferry schedules, and a simple application process. She offers legal residency, not citizenship, allowing people to retain their national identity, while gaining a second passport issued by Aya's island. She partners with rogue diplomats, neutral shipping companies, and underground networks to distribute physical pamphlets and telegrams. As people began to move their families to Aya's island, she shows them the new schools. Unlike traditional classrooms, each of these are one half circle. It is designed to increase learning by 35 to 40%. An android, with quantum computing learning and teaching abilities, will be teaching the students. Aya personally greets each child saying you're not broken, you are not forgotten, you are our future. Aya emphasizes building a legacy for themselves, creative thought and evolution of design, and ethics of intervention. Aya teaches them not just technology, but philosophy, history, and interstellar ethics, held to the very highest standards. Their stories spread through newspapers and magazines, drawing more families to the island. Aya builds a massive covered open-air market called the Bazaar of Wonders, where traders from around the world can purchase matter resequenced goods at below wholesale prices. The businessman would then bring the products in which he wanted to build. All the parts would be manufactured by quantum AI and matter sequencing, and then would be assembled by the newcomers to the island. This allowed everyone an opportunity to be gainfully employed. Businesses that moved to her island can apply for a merchant residency, which includes a second passport for each family member, and a trade license. If you're a business person wanting to build and manufacture here, business income tax would be a flat 5%. This would help run the government. Law enforcement would be quantum AI androids. They would adhere to a very strict discipline, and the Constitution was the law of the land, and could not, and would not be corrupted in any way. These were the People's Bill of Rights. The courtrooms would be powered by an AI judge, that would also be incorruptible. A very strict adherence to the law was met with mercy, compassion, and ethical guidelines. Aya was sick to her stomach, with all the corrupt politicians, and wishy-washy styled governments that she had encountered in the past. No longer would the people be the victim of corruption. The law was the law, but it was always tendered with compassion, mercy, and a moral ethical standard that almost anyone would appreciate. Those who broke the law in a very big way would be excommunicated from the island permanently. You got a one-way ticket to any place on Earth as long as it wasn't here. Everything was going according to plan. In fact, for many years, things went so well that the entire world had become amazed at the tranquility, the friendliness, and the lack of crime. It was so obvious that other countries began to wonder how did she do it. Unemployment was almost non-existent. The hospitals were the finest in the world. Android doctors and nurses filled the hospitals and doctors' clinics. They used medicine that was on 23rd century level. People that were dying came from all over the world to be cured. Kings, dictators, rulers of all kinds came from their kingdoms, which could not help them to be healed. This opened up additional trade with other countries, and provided a friendly trade agreement with those countries. In fact, Aya had opened up a university with such high levels of education, that many of the superior colleges from around the world became green with envy and with great jealousy of the level of education that Aya's university could provide. Over 3,500 acres of campus. The college had every amenity that a student could possibly need. Advancements in science, medicine, engineering, and other sciences and technologies was so overwhelming that the world had a hard time keeping up with what the graduates were able to think up and create on their own. Politicians constantly scheming how can we put this republic and Queen Aya out of business. Well, the stock market is booming, but it's fixing to pop like a balloon any minute. We need the sell of our stocks and bonds immediately. This way we'll be safe by putting our money into treasuries. Then whenever the collapse takes place, we can blame it on this Queen Aya of the Republic. Well, gentlemen, just remember we tried to enslave her and force her to do our will, but we forgot that she could teleport anywhere in the world at any time she wanted. We need to get back at her. She took all the good science and technology with her. Yes. But if you remember, there was a faith-based uprising at the time because they was terrified of her science and technology. Well, then let's use that, and the strength that we have as congressmen and senators, and see if we can't put this problem of ours to bed. Then after the stock market bust, we'll close all the banks, gather up all the money, and hold about a month or 2-month long bank holiday. And then whenever we open it back up, we can blame the whole thing on Queen Aya. We will say that she created the problem, because all the good jobs are gone overseas to her island. 1929, it happens exactly as history records. The stock market crashes, massive bank failures, mass unemployment. The politicians in the United States began to blame Aya and her island for all of the problems, as she shipped out everything from basic minerals and goods to exotic technology. This overwhelmed the world. It's all her fault. Aya's island feels the shockwaves. Production dips due to global supply chain disruptions, but her clinics, businesses, and super university remain untouched. Her systems are too advanced, too decentralized, too ethical to fail. Scheming politicians. Western powers, desperate to deflect blame, start whisper campaigns. Aya's tech destabilized our markets. Her cures are bankrupting our pharma industry. She's hoarding modern resources. The media manipulation. Newspapers and radio broadcasts spin stories. Leaked documents, possibly forged, suggest Aya's advisors met with the European financiers. The public starts to question, is she a savior or a saboteur? Aya's response. Calm, precise, and devastatingly effective. She releases a public address with irrefutable data, exposing the real culprits. But she doesn't name names, yet. Anonymous leaks. A rogue journalist publishes a dossier titled The 15. It details the European financiers' role in the collapse. It includes maps, meeting transcripts, and coded memos. Aya's intelligence network and her quantum AI uncovers a plot to frame her for economic sabotage. She's forced to go public with partial truths, knowing full exposure could trigger a world war. Public unrest in Europe and America. Citizens begin protesting their own governments. Why are we blaming Aya and her island when our own banks failed us? The narrative fractures. Now the ethical dilemmas begin to surface. Should Aya name the 15? Doing so could destabilize Europe further. Should she offer economic aid? It might look like guilt or manipulation. Should she build a firewall around her island? Isolation could protect her people, but betray her global ideals. Aya, to her council. They want a villain. They want a scapegoat. But I will not give them one. Let the truth rise not by my hand, but by theirs. We will remain open, remain brilliant, and remain unbroken. And if they come for us, they will find we are not alone. The defensive diplomacy. Neutral but not passive, Aya refuses to take sides, but begins quiet preparations, protection of infrastructure, stealth surveillance of global military movements, and diplomatic outreach to peaceful nations. The refugee haven. Her island becomes a sanctuary for scientists, artists, and dissidents fleeing fascist regimes. This enrages authoritarian leaders. The scientific countermeasures. The island's ethics council. Aya convenes a global summit to discuss the ethical use of emerging technologies in wartime. Germany boycotts. America sends observers. The rising tensions. Hitler's propaganda machine begins accusing Aya of harboring enemies of the Reich and undermining traditional values. Her island is labeled a degenerate haven. The sabotage attempts. German operatives try to infiltrate Aya's systems. One is caught inside the super university, posing as a historian. The AI police arrest the villain. Aya's broadcast. She delivers a calm but firm global address. We do not wage war. We do not hoard power. But we will not be silenced. Truth is not a weapon, it is a light. And we will keep it burning. It was a Black Tuesday, the stock market crash of 1929. Overspeculation, as well as easy credit, led to the Great Depression of 1929. People were borrowing money left and right to play the stock market. The bubble burst, stocks plummeted, and the people's money was gone. Banks and other institutions loaned out money, knowing that the people were going to gamble it in the stock market. They believed that it was a sure bet that no one could possibly lose in the stock market. But they were wrong. October 29, 1929. Aya's tri-quantum computer had to determine that the crash would occur on Black Tuesday 1929. The previous Friday afternoon, Aya's computer sold all the stocks and bonds that Aya had invested in throughout the entire world. She cashed it all in. Her island secured the money in the Swiss bank. This was a backup to her own solid gold reserve. She knew that she would be able to move and shake many things with the new wealth she has created by bailing out of the stock market just in time. This was the perfect time to begin issuing her own currency, rather than depending on the currencies of the world, as a primary medium of exchange. Hundreds and hundreds of tons of gold stored away in an underground vault, with 30 feet of titanium walls protecting the gold, silver, platinum, and palladium that it was in her storehouse. She then began to issue her own currency, knowing full well that this would raise the ire of several nations, especially the United States, where they wanted to create a world reserve currency, and it be their own, not hers. At the end of the day, Aya had created some 100 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of gold, and another 100 Olympic-sized swimming pools full of silver. All this was put away in the Great Vault. The Great Depression that hit the entire world in 1929 brought the economy in all markets, in all countries, to a great slowdown. Everybody was looking for a new product to put on the market in hopes that somebody would part with their money and make the vendor a little extra profit. Aya's Island, the Rome Republic, was the ideal setup for many different countries and many different merchants, as they could have what they wanted manufactured at a reasonable price, at slightly below wholesale market prices, and then bring the price up to be competitive yet profitable in their countries. Over time, the economies of the world began to flourish more and more. Only America was dragging its feet, with many different politicians wanting to do this, that, or the other, causing a setback in the markets. Rumblings of a Second World War was on the horizon. Germany was beginning to rear its head and espousing domination. Many of the politicians, still scorned by the fact that Aya had taken back all of their military equipment that she had given them, had set a burr under their saddle. They were yet to set out and give her some payback. Like all politicians, they did not realize that they were the problem. They were their own worst enemies, but then again, in politics and politicians, this seems to be the norm. Aya had decided that she was going to sit out this next major war. She had had her fill of the previous one, and how she was treated for trying to help out. She put a protective force field around the island, only letting in certain aircraft and certain ships. This way she could control the flow of traffic and still maintain a high level of security. Aya began to build an army unbeknownst to the rest of the world, kept an underground underwater base housing over 200 million android soldiers. These were her just-in-case military, navy, and air force. She was not going to be dragged into another war for someone else's benefit. If she did have to go to war, it would be to protect the island, and the island only. The year is now 1941, and Aya decided to build another spaceship, like the one that she had came to Earth on, but this time of a slightly different design. This would be basically for space exploration and scientific advancement for the world. She had completed the Starship with FTL drive, and she made the maiden voyage on January 1, 1941. She sent photographs and videos straight to the island and distributed newsreels to the rest of the world. The world was astounded at this leap of science and technology. Many were aghast at such power that a 29-year-old girl now wielded. 25 orbits around the Earth, 6 orbits around the Moon, then landing on its surface. Samples were collected by robotics and brought back to the ship to be brought back to Earth for study. She then went to Mars and did the same. She returned home safely and turned over all samples to the great University of Rhode Island. Aya's new spaceship now went faster than the ship that she had originally arrived on, going to Earth. Aya was now in full FTL and had achieved warp 18. It was at the theoretical threshold before warping time and space itself. Aya then took the video and converted it to film and sent it out as a newsreel to the entire world, showing off her great accomplishment. Government of the world were astonished and fearful. They feared that Aya may once again jump into a world war, and maybe this time just take over rather than help. Gentlemen, we've turned our backs on Queen Aya twice in her lifetime, and she now invites us to have 4 our best pilots from each branch of the military to come aboard her new starship. She will train them how to fly it. And all she wants in return is for us to say that we are the first humans in space. That's all she wants. One of the other generals chimed in, "This is perfect. Once she's taught all of our men how to operate the spaceship, we can take over and own that spaceship. Then we won't need her at all." Yeah, but you got one problem. Whenever something breaks, how do we fix it? What if it won't run without her present? It has that, what do they call that, artificial intelligence built in. We take over, that AI will take us hostage. We've already betrayed her twice, and she's looking for us to do it a third time. No, let's not start any mad schemes. Let's just take her gracious invitation and be the first humans in space. Everybody already knows she's an alien, so Americans would truly be the first humans in space. This is a grand opportunity for us to show power to the world, that we are the first, and we have the ability to go into space. Yes, I know, Queen Aya is giving us a ride. But maybe, just maybe, Queen Aya will give us a third chance. Each branch of the military agreed, and they stated that they will be on their very best behavior, regardless of what the politicians might say. This is an opportunity for America to be the first humans in space. By George, we've got to strike while the iron is hot. Let's accept her invitation. There was some mumbling, and each of the generals agreed. And now, the training will begin. After 16 weeks of hard training, Aya had all of the astronauts fully trained. They seemed at ease and tranquil with the operations and the procedures of the ship. Everyone was in good humor. In fact, many of them joked around between themselves. Aya knew that they were ready. And today these brave American men would go into space. After 16 orbits around the Earth, it was time to engage the FTL drive. They were going to go to a world that's 46 light years away from Earth. Here they would learn to use the scanners and the sensors built into the ship to learn what the planet is made of, the atmosphere, and the search for any life, even possibilities that we do not yet know as of the present.
Gentlemen, let's get ready to prepare to break orbit. Captain Mitchell, please enter these coordinates: 16, 18, 27, 19, 11, 12. Lieutenant Anderson, are you ready, sir? Very good. Engage the FTL, warp factor 9.
The FTL engine was engaged and went to warp 9 in a matter of 11 seconds. They were well on their way to the mysterious alien world that had not yet been named. The journey would take 5 hours. They inquired, why are we not going the full 18? Very simple, said Aya. I'm training you under Warp 10. Warp 10 is very much like the sound barrier. You don't want to sit there on the threshold, as it has tendencies to do weird things. You need to break Warp 10 quickly in order to prevent any oddities from taking place. We'll get there soon enough because you need to learn to be patient. Space travel is all about being patient. Yes, ma'am. Aya continued to train the astronauts in delicate operations of traveling in FTL. Why it was important to utilize as much of the AI as possible during warp travel. Or without the AI, warp speed would not be possible. You would run into something such as a sun, nova, even a planet. This is all about getting there safely. 4 hours and 49 minutes later, Aya instructed the astronauts to drop out of FTL and use forward thrusters. Some 15 minutes later, they were upon the planet that orbited a foreign star. Here they would learn how to use sensor readings, how to find anomalies, and possibly life forms. Thus, the great mystery and search for life began. All right, gentlemen, this is the moment we all been waiting for. Mr. Mitchell, launch 6 probes to the surface, spreading them out 15 degrees apart. Yes, ma'am, said Mitchell. The telemetry started coming in within just a few minutes. Each person was gathering as much data through the sensors in the probes as possible. Once the probes reached the planet, small robotics would then launch themselves upon the surface of the planet. They would then begin to drill down as much as 6 meters, taking core samples of the planet. Others would scoop up dirt and search for bacteria, viruses, and any organic life forms that might be present. This world had water. The ambient temperature was 86 degrees Fahrenheit, oxygen level was 27%. Perfect for life as we know it. All of the sensors came back nothing. No bacteria, no microorganisms, no plant life, no animal life, no protein, nothing that would suggest life at all. It was a barren world, with both fresh water and salt water making up seas and lakes all over the world. We're gonna bring back the core samples, Mr. Davidson. Yes, ma'am. Retrieve the core samples and the probes. Do a recall, pleaser. Yes, ma'am. All of the probes and sensors, the small robotics, everything returned to the ship and was put into quarantine. Here the quarantine would be vacuum sealed hermetically in glass. This way nothing could escape. The samples would be divided between the great university, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Carnegie Mellon, UCLA, and Texas A&M. There would be enough scientists and science students anxious to learn what this new world might provide in the future. Mr. Williams. Yes, ma'am. Have you finished mapping the planet? Yes, ma'am. All data is recorded. Excellent. Mr. Adams. Yes, ma'am. It's your turn at the helm. I want you to get some experience going back home. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Adams, said Aya, please set in the coordinates 0,0.0,0. We're going back to Earth. Just in time for supper. All of the men laughed. Aya said, engage Mr. Adams. Engaging Miss Aya. And, for the next 4 hours and 49 minutes, they would sit back on autopilot traveling back home to Earth. Once the samples got back to Earth, all the most brilliant minds, in all of the European and American science academies and universities, came together to study the results of the samples that were brought back from the alien world. They feverishly worked, tried to find some form of life, but there were none. Everything was there, in perfect synchronization with nature to support life, but there was none. This planet was perfect for terraforming, so that eventually human life could live on this new planet. It would take several years to get everything started. Yet, the soil was perfect, the water was perfect, the atmosphere was perfect, temperature and sunlight were perfect. It was just devoid of life, waiting on someone to deposit life upon this planet to start civilization anew. Headline news: Alien world has possibilities of being terraformed as found lifeless. Scientists tell us that the alien world can become a new Earth within 20 years. Lifeless planet has all the proper conditions to be terraformed within 20 years. Scientists say that it is perfect to create a brand new Earth. IRO, pledges to build additional spacecraft so that anyone that wishes to inhabit the new world can do so and not be afraid of being cut off from the Earth. There are additional plans to mine asteroid fields between Mars and Jupiter. The stock market reacts to the positive news, and the stock market gains over 200 points in a single day. Tourism is planned within 5 years, and resorts are planned within 15 years. A new era is upon us all. Gentlemen, well, we've all heard the news. Once again, IRO has done it again. She's opened up opportunities to start a new Earth. We've got to get in on the ground floor and send our military there to secure the planet. Yes, but that's gonna leave us in a lurch. Here on Earth, it seems that Germany has reared its head again and has started another war. They've already started moving their troops into other countries, and it appears that we are going to be dragged into this nightmare, whether we like it or not. Oh great, just as we were starting to have positive ground, some fooling idiot over in Europe decides to throw a war. If it never rains it pours. Well, it looks like we were going to have to put all of our personal plans and military plans on hold for a little while. Queen Aya says she's not going to get into the war, but she said she will supply us with parts, bombs, and missiles, and other things that we might need to fight the war. But she's not gonna give us the same aircraft she did during the last big war. She said I just refused to get into the war unless it is thrown right into her own lap. One of the other generals says, I don't blame her. Just when everything's starting to get good, somebody has to throw a fly into the ointment. Well, looks like we're gonna be dragged kicking and screaming into the European theater before long, as Germany is going headlong into conquering all these other countries. We must prepare for war but not act upon it until it is absolutely necessary. Preparations need to be made now. All of the generals agreed, and put the expansion plans on hold for the time being. The world has been there for billions of years, it can wait a few more. One of the other generals says, after this conflict goes away, it opens up great possibilities for us all. Gentlemen, we must do the right thing. Queen Aya is definitely gonna put everything on hold for the time being anyway. She, like the rest of us, sees conflict coming, and it's unwise to start something new if a war breaks out. Just a few days later, the newspapers read, Pacific shock, Japan strikes Pearl Harbor, America answers. Honolulu, December 7, 1941, in a stunning and unprovoked assault, Japanese aircraft descended upon the United States Pacific Fleet anchored at Pearl Harbor at this morning, unleashed waves of bombs and torpedoes that left battleships burning and airfields in ruins. The attack lasted barely 2 hours, has already been called the gravest blow to American soil in living memory. Military officials confirm heavy losses, with several capital ships crippled and hundreds of servicemen killed or wounded. Civilians across Hawaii watched in disbelief as Mount Billy scoured, a grim signal that the Pacific is now aflame. President Roosevelt addressed the nation within hours declaring the strike quote a day of infamy end quote, and vowing swift retaliation. Congress is expected to convene immediately to authorize a formal declaration of war against Japan. Across the country, enlisted officers report surging crowds of young men determined to answer the call. The Pacific Theater, once a distant horizon, has now become the front line. America's response will be decisive, and the world awaits to see how this sudden war will reshape the balance of power. Aya had decided that she would stay out of the war, but even though she had been mistreated by America and the European countries, that was the leadership, and not the people. Many of these people that are going into war are not there willingly. Therefore she would freely without cost issue on loan a new type of super healing machine. As long as you had a heartbeat, this machine would restore your body back to brand new. It would eliminate disease, injury, scarring, by taking your base DNA and rewriting all the cells in your body in an exact coordinates to your own DNA and RNA. She let the leaders of the world know that these were strictly on loan. These were to be distributed among all the military bases and MASH units throughout the theater. America, and all of America's allies were issued these machines. She trained the medical technicians and doctors how to use them. It saved lives. I will not participate in this war. However, I offer healing. I do not seek death for others, but healing, and the ability to return to one's families unimpeded. I do not fight death, I promote healing, said Aya. Use these devices wisely. While the European theater in America prepared for war, Aya took the scientists that came to her island, and they boarded her spaceship. They then proceeded to the New World. Here they began terraforming the entire planet using Aya's new terraforming machinery, AI systems, and seeding machines. Within 6 months, life began to show itself throughout the planet. At first it was quite sparse, but then it began to grow quite rapidly. The additional crews of biologists, horticulturists, and agricultural specialists began coming to the new planet. They were well pleased in which they witnessed. At the end of 9 months, the planet had been terraformed into a lush and beautiful planet. Aya had gone to the northern European countries in search of beekeepers that were accustomed to working with the lesser aggressive bee species. She paid the beekeepers in gold and silver to bring their bees to this new planet. Set up beehives not to harvest honey, but to multiply the bee population so the bees would pollinate all of the plants. The reason for the lesser aggressive species was they were quite the honey producers and would not evolve into a more aggressive species. Aya worked aggressively with all the specialists in agricultural, botany, horticulture, and other plant life specialists. She was terraforming it, readying the planet to be a lush green paradise very much like Earth. Crops were the next item on the list. Quickly food production sprang to life 2, sometimes 3 times faster than that on Earth. Aya and the scientists were well pleased. We will now be able to colonize this world, she said. The geologists, mineralogists, and other researchers discovered vast riches of minerals and metals on the planet. This would be the great new Earth. A paradise, cultural revolution, and science revolution. Industrialists from America and the European areas were salivating over the opportunity to begin building in this new world. A growing number of agricultural specialists began moving their family members to the new planet. Each had an opportunity to grow their own food in their new settlement. They built fences to hold in the cows, chickens, hogs, and other livestock. Even the elderly had the joys of a personal garden in this new world. Over a period of time, Aya had built a great city. This way the inhabitants of Earth could come here and start their businesses right away. She would not be queen of this world, it would belong to the people. Aya loved the people of the Earth. She did not care for the politics of any country, but the individuals. She dearly loved, with all of her heart. As Aya prepared to return to the Earth and to her island, the Second World War comes to an end. Germany announces complete surrender. The foreign minister tells his people. Finally, the war was over. Now, the world could get back to business at hand. To create an industrial revolution. Soldiers returned to their respected countries, and the world began to build anew. Aya was overjoyed with the fact that it was completely over. Now, she could share what she had built with the people of Earth. Just a 5-hour trip from Earth to the new world, she would need to build a bigger ship. This way she could ferry people back and forth from the new world back to Earth. Many people were eager to see this new planet, one that had been terraformed just for them. It was truly a revolutionary new day. A grand and glorious adventure for the people of Earth. Upon Aya's return trip to Earth, she met a handsome young gentleman. He was a mechanical engineer with a master's in mechanical engineering and a bachelor's in electrical engineering. His IQ was rated at 170. As Aya began to talk with this young gentleman, she began to fall in love with Mr. George Wilson. George and Aya immediately hit it off, and within 8 weeks was married. This was a dream come true for Aya. George also wanted a family, and their likes and interests ran along very similar lines. As the years went by, Aya and her husband George had 15 children. Most were born as twins. And some were triplets. Not identical twins or triplets, but fraternal twins or triplets. It is the family she had always dreamed of. Now a reality. Each child was healthy, happy, and extremely brilliant. Despite the fact that the children had been born into Aya's royalty, the children did not act like it. They played freely with other children. They did not hold their stature above anyone. Everybody was equal to them in their eyes. They got along beautifully with other people. Time passed on, and George began to mature into a mature gentleman. Yet, Aya remained her youthful age of around 21 years of age. This is despite everything. They were still deeply in love with one another. Aya began to break down and cry hysterically, screaming.
No. Oh God, no. Oh dear God. Oh God. Oh, please get them. Oh God. Oh God. Oh God.
What is wrong? Asked her husband. What is causing you to cry, my love? It took a few minutes for Aya to retain her composure enough to even speak as she trembled and grabbed her husband and squeezed him with all her might and all of her love. It is now 2032. Aya explains to her husband. Aya had been studying the Earth's magnetic field weakening. She knows that something is up, but not exactly what. She begins to study the geomagnetic excursion of the galaxy. This is that the entire galaxy goes through ever 25,800 to 26,400 years as it makes a single rotation. For the most part, Earth is extremely stable. However, in this rotation, there are several geomagnetic excursions that take place at the same time as we go through different dust storms that are peppered throughout the journey. This is the part that creates solar excursions, dust storms, yes, dust storms in space. It is all the way from fine dust all the way up to boulders the size of Dallas, Texas. These are the ones that created Noah's flood and all other periodic disasters the Earth has gone through throughout time. They almost snuff out the sun, then the sun bursts back into normalcy, and it creates what is known as a micronova. We're talking about the electric field of the Earth, ripping out from the center, driven by the Earth's rotation, and confirmed in math and theory. During these times, glaciers retreat and sea levels rise. Conversely, when variations lead to solar energy being increased in the northern regions, carnage by excessive ice coverage, and rising sea levels. In addition to the North and South Pole beginning to weaken and wander to different locations are causing continents such as Africa to split in two. There are a number of tectonic forces being created in the Atlantic Ocean, and it continues to reshape the world map. The East African Rift is a vast geological formation, in a process known as continental rifting, occurring as such divergent tectonic plate forces that pull the Earth's crust apart as the plates continue to split in the future. This phenomenon will result in displacement of communities and settlements throughout the continent. Many plant and animal species will be unable to adapt to the new environment. Aya continues her studies of the Earth. What is causing it to change? She's discovered that the planets in the entire solar system are changing too. Some such as Mars, Jupiter, and Uranus are changing much faster than Earth. I had discovered that the Sun's primary magnetic and chemical makeup are shifting toward a micronova shell. The cycle has begun. It appears that the Sun is reaching its 12,000-year cycle, and this will cause the Earth's pole to shift in just a few short years if not sooner. You see, husband, as the magnetic field of the Earth begins to weaken, and the poles begin to wander away from true rotational north, it begins to affect the brains of all animals that require the magnetic poles to be steady in order to do migratory travels at appropriated time. If the poles wander too far, it will confuse the animal life in their migration, and when it gets way too far, it will affect human brain. We're already beginning to see strange anomalies in the actions of people as we speak. We're even on the verge of World War III. The leaders of our different countries have gone stark raving mad. Their decisions make no sense whatsoever. As I have read through the Bible, I see these reflections being predicted for the future, and I began to wonder, did the people that wrote the Bible, who tells the story of what's happened once before? It would make sense. It would make sense to the people that they were writing to at the time, rather than the people of this era. It is all coming together. The sun will be red as sackcloth of hair, and the moon will be blood red. This will be the result of multiple volcanoes erupting throughout the Earth, spewing ash into the air, and creating this very effect. You see, the galactic current sheet is caused by a black hole that is in the center of this galaxy. It is small, confined, considered to be stable, but it puts out a pulsar-like emission with polar structure and puts out an electromagnetic wave that is similar to a sine wave, but it is in a spiral formation. This radiates throughout the entire galaxy and beyond. This is typical of all galaxies. Also, the rotation of the galaxy contains debris left over from the beginning, including dust storms, and some of those dust storms containing rocks the size of planets. Each cycle for this galaxy is 12,000 years. It causes the ice ages, the warm ages, the tropical ages, and the temperate ages. The sine wave has peaks and troughs in it. Each peak is 6,000 years, and each trough is also 6,000 years. These peaks are what contains the energy that causes the sun to create what is known as a micronova. The last micronova was approximately 6,000 years ago, causing Noah's flood. If you recall in the Bible, it briefly describes that there was a great mist upon the earth. There were no oceans at that time. Multiple lakes, rivers, and streams, of course, but mankind could walk all over the earth and travel without having to use great ships to get there. Yes, early man did use ships to cross lakes much larger than Lake Huron, Lake Erie, but they could walk as well around those lakes and rivers. Once the flood came, the waters came up from deep below, and the condensation became rain. This is what caused your 40 days and 40 nights of rain. There are still many great aquifers throughout the world, but none are like the original before Noah's time. And this is the reason that exploration of the oceans today are revealing great stone cities on the bottom of the ocean. There are hundreds of them. So how did they build them? Quite easily, there was no ocean there at that time. This means that those stone structures are over 24,000 years old each. Some as old as 48,000 years old. Who built these? No one really knows. My people did not have records of your people that far back. Aya, using her great tri-quantum processor, implanted in her brain, began to build 6 large starships that could carry 500,000 people each. This would provide a living usable quarters and adequate space. There would be recreational centers, dining and other facilities. This would take them to a new Earth. Should they choose to do so. She completed the 6 starships. Aya began announcing to the world what was coming. Those who wished to go to New Earth with her could do so, otherwise they would have to take their chances here on Earth. Much to Aya's dismay, only a handful of people, only 1.5 million, chose to go to New Earth. They were at least of the highest educated class and their families. The rest of the world did not believe her. But nobody seems to realize, or even willing to realize, in less than 6 years we're going to see massive asteroid fields pass through our solar system. Some of those will hit Earth. It'll kill off a lot of the population. You see, Nostradamus wrote a letter to his son Caesar predicting this, during the Great Conflagration. Scarcely anyone will be left on the earth to even till the land, or even wanting to try to do so. He was dead on this. We have minimum of 6, maximum of 10 years. I have crunched the numbers. I've used our tri-quantum supercomputer at the university that I created. Even after crunching the numbers for over a month, we still get the same results. We're about to go into a world war, and there's a new religion that everyone is converting to. He came out of the European Union. He has the majority of the people's ear. He is now calling for global currency in a digital format very much like that of Bitcoin. The world is rallying around him. While he is stopping the world war from happening at this moment, he won't be able to do it for long. Once the great conflagration begins, and the solar forcing, and the great dust storm that is in the asteroid field, only a handful, yes, only a handful will survive. That's why we must get more than 1.5 million people off this planet and take them to New Earth. New Earth doesn't have this particular cycle. Instead of 6,000 or 12,000 years, it's 250,000 years. We still have 192,000 years to go on that planet. We must get them off this world. But they will not listen to me. The great leader has stated that I am a devil and that I need to leave this world. I'm leaving all right, but I'm leaving him in the dust. I am going to New Earth too. There's nothing that I can do for the people that won't come. This new religion, it is sweeping the world by storm. We will be castigated and maybe even killed if we don't join their religion. If you don't join, you don't get to use their Bitcoin like currency, and you will not be able to buy, sell, or trade. If you are considered a heretic, they will tell you this is what their great leader has just stated on the internet, TV, and the radio. We must leave Earth and leave Earth now. As Aya and her husband, her children, and the 1.5 million people that was willing to go with Aya, all headed to New Earth too. We will begin educating everyone in the new university on New Earth too. Aya, her husband, her children, and those who were willing to leave the Earth for a time, disembarked and headed for the new world. The asteroid field came in about 3.5 years. This was at a time in which all mankind was converting. Anyone leaving the Earth and coming back would be targeted for death under this new religion. Back on Earth too, Aya, her husband, and all of her children were safely on Earth too. They decided to stay here on Earth too and make this their permanent home. Everyone else had freedom of choice where they wished to go. She was not the queen of this world like she was the island back on Earth, just a normal everyday person, along with her everyday husband and everyday children. This is the way Aya wished it. Aya remained on Earth number 2 long after her husband had passed. She now had great-grandchildren. She did not age. She was still the beauty that she was at age 21. Many of the people of Earth wanted to go back and see if anyone had survived that great conflagration. When they did, they were maybe 1 million people worldwide. They had reverted back to the Bible, the King James. At this point, she looked over to her right and saw children happily playing in a field of flowers. It so reminded Aya of her own children, and great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. The world was now at peace. There were no wars, no bickering, no backbiting, just people that welcomed her with open arms. This was truly the era of peace. She was so grateful. Aya then returned to Earth too, where she would live out her days with her family. She would not remarry, for she loved her husband so greatly. Half of the people wanted to remain on the planet Earth. They wanted to help rebuild, to rejoice in the fact that their home was still there. The rest of the people returned to Earth number 2. Here Aya lived out the rest of her days, 4,800 years. Earth number 2 had grown into a great and wonderful world. But she missed her husband so terribly. She would work with her family and help tend to the youngest of her great-great-great-great-grandchildren. Aya did not want a funeral, but she wanted a great celebration of life. All of the wealth that she had accumulated would be equally divided among all the people of Earth number 2. The people of Earth number 2 would miss her and her husband. A great monument had been built in her name. It was about 80 feet tall. It was not a monument of worship, but one of admiration. One of great accomplishments. And her great love for each and every person there. This is how Earth number 2 remembered her.